Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Driven Wild. Today we are talking about Chris Barnes' interview on Rideshare Rodeo. So DLIVRD has been going through a general rebrand from being DLIVRD, the catering platform, to Expedite, and their overall company has been acquiring different types of companies and been going through some general changes, some of which have actually caused a lot of harm to drivers, costing them a source of income. Chris Barnes is actually one of those executives that has been making those calls on their end. And quite frankly, I am interested to hear what he is about to say on the Rideshare Rodeo podcast. I know that Steve likes the DLIVRD team. I have my gripes with them, so I'm gonna add my perspective to this. So with that said, we are talking about everything that's being said in these videos, how it actually is in the catering space and in the catering economy, and how they've affected the gig economy and everything in between. But before we do that, let's go over a quick disclaimer. The content of this video does not contain, is never intended to be, legal, business, financial, tax, or health advice of any kind. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is advised that you conduct your own research and consult qualified professionals before applying anything you find online. I also want to be clear that everything we're going to be going over is very market to market and case by case. What applies to me and my market may not apply to you. Also, like I said, I have a lot of gripes with DLIVRD. I don't have any gripes with Steve, so please don't misunderstand my opinions on DLIVRD with any negative feelings towards Steve, because there aren't any. So with that said, let's get started.
Why are there four hands in the cookie jar? Like, why is there DLIVRD, Expedite, GigSafe, and Giggy?
So quick note, really quick on this subject. GigSafe is formerly known as Para. David and Jimmy were both working on that, Jimmy Thompson, and they've also worked on a bunch of other stuff in the gig economy. So I am interested to hear how this is going to work out. Kind of seems like a conflict of interest, at least in my opinion, but still.
And then I talked to another user that we all know, or many of us know, Tim. I won't go any farther than Tim, but like Tim didn't go through that process. And I was like, wait, then why did I? And what's going on?
So let's quickly tackle that point that Steve brought up. What they were saying is that somebody, I know who he's referring to, but it doesn't matter if it's him or if it's somebody else, but somebody in the gig economy who is very active in the gig economy did not have to go through the same process as effectively everyone else. So there is a difference in treatment here. So I do want that clear, that it does exist. Like, there is a disparity there.
I think something that we've always struggled with is having a good dialogue with a remote fleet that's nationwide. And
this is coming from the same company and the same group of people that wrongfully deactivated me and treated me like absolute garbage. I've made a video about that. Let's make it absolutely clear that they do not care about having a dialogue. They just want the public-facing image that makes it seem that way when that's not how it actually is.
I guess maybe just starting at the top, because we've got DLIVRD and Expedite, and then there's also GigSafe and Giggy. So maybe just starting with DLIVRD and like what's going on with the DLIVRD brand. We did convert DLIVRD, we launched really DLIVRD Technologies Incorporated. That's going to be a parent company moving forward. It's got a portfolio of smaller companies underneath it, one of those being Expedite. And the general idea, and it's a little bit of a swing that Chris Heffernan is like really trying, is that we do different things under the DLIVRD brand, and we think we're good at it. And we think that if we're good at these different items, these different concepts, well, let's make them its own company, go out there and try to sell it to the marketplace, maybe get customers that aren't even, our typical delivery customers. And that'll make more sense as I talk through some things. But basically, this allows us to have Expedite do this, and our marketing company do that, and our gig-facing company do this, all under that DLIVRD brand.
It's not unheard of that a company will buy out another company to account for certain parts of that same company. Like, there are a lot of people that will launch the general parent company and then have like a couple of other subsidiaries that handle software and some handles marketing, and this is actually very normal. This is not unheard of. What they're doing actually makes a lot of sense from a structural standpoint. This is also something that makes them a little bit more suit-proof, because if Expedite gets in trouble, nothing happens to Giggy, DLIVRD, or to any of the other smaller companies they have. So this is actually a really normal thing. And it's a way for them to protect assets in a way that kind of makes them suit-proof. Like, you could sue them for the money in this company, but you can't target everything else. There's a lot of structural financial safety there.
Expedite is our delivery technology. Expedite is our driver app, our dispatching offering system, our client-facing app, our client-facing portal. Basically, anything that facilitates last mile delivery is under this Expedite brand. Expedite's also the one out there signing contracts with restaurants, trying to get them through. So DLIVRD, again, the big parent, and now here I am. I run Expedite, the day-to-day underneath that. So we did rebrand the driver app to be Expedite. Same exact thing, but rebranded. Our pay card was always Expedite. Our client-facing technology was always Expedite. This kind of like plunge into Expedite was something that we actually debated for like a year and a half, because we had already been using the term Expedite for our technology internally, but we were so married to the name DLIVRD. And in part of kind of like a lot of the big things we're doing, we finally decided to make the plunge of making Expedite its own standalone.
I love how they were like trying to retcon what they were trying to do before. They're trying to basically say, hey, DLIVRD was always a DBA for us, or a doing business as for us, not the actual company itself. So that's actually very interesting.
And it's definitely confusing to do that in the middle, to do a rebrand at any time. But Expedite, it's way easier to spell. It's way easier to give people my email when I'm using Expedite.
Yeah, about that, for a long time, a lot of these companies would use normal verbiage and just take out the vowels, because vowels were just really expensive in terms of getting certain parts of the business going. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, for a website, there are certain upcharges to the letter E or the letter I. So in order to mitigate those costs, they would remove those letters entirely, and that was how they would choose to handle it. Now they still do that to a certain degree, but it's so much less now, especially since like people still need to spell the company name in order to find it. Like, my company name is driven Wyld, W-Y-L-D. Wyld is actually a pretty normal name, so I'm already fighting the concept of misspelling and the fact that so many other people have that name, or even have a similar name, W-Y-L-D, but it's W-Y-L-D-E or W-Y-L-D-D-E or something to that effect. So the name of your company does matter in terms of finding what they're looking for, but you can't be too specific. Otherwise, you risk pigeonholing yourself into one industry. Or you could do what DLIVRD is doing and just buying a bunch of companies, having those bunch of companies work for each other and with each other, but also you sell those services as well. There's a bunch of ways you can go about it.
Yeah.
So now instead of our legacy DLIVRD, we're using gig safes, and suddenly immediately we got to have them contracted to meet those insurance needs. It has to have that exact MVR, and that's where you saw us have this really big project of moving 10,000 drivers all at the same time to go through this gig safe funnel.
Wow, that's actually interesting. You know, I said in a previous video that my perception of DLIVRD was that they involved themselves in the greater gig economy, or they are now amongst the greater gig economy because of the volume they produce and their name recognition. Right? DLIVRD, that's in the same boat in that regard, and that is all very true. But I guess I misunderstood what volume of drivers that really means. Catering delivery is in a specific time frame of the day, and if you work a 9 to 5, that basically disqualifies you in a lot of cases. But I guess I didn't really get the idea that, hey, that's not the amount of drivers that you think you would need. In my mind, the amount of drivers that I think that I would need is closer to what DoorDash and Uber has in order to get the coverage to serve the clients that I would want to serve, especially if it's like on-demand delivery, as opposed to scheduled catering orders. But no, like that's only 10,000. If you're doing scheduled orders, that actually might work out in your favor. So I guess in order to become part of the greater gig economy, it doesn't take as much as I initially thought it would. So I guess that's just an interesting discovery to me. I like noticing those things.
I'm a fan of both. I'm a fan of David and GigSafe, but I'm also a fan of the concept in general. I've been in this industry for a long time. I worked really closely with DDI for a long time.
Yep.
I had to fight whatever company I was at. I had to fight for DDI along the way because my owners never want to pay for it because to them it's just insurance. You only use it when you need it. But I always thought that it was an important resource because they're the ones who help actually understand what it is to be a gig worker and help facilitate that model, in a compliant way for everybody. I think that GigSafe does that as well. But again, us bringing GigSafe on brought a lot of different requirements and needs that we had to get accomplished, essentially by September 1st.
I wonder if September 1st is the beginning of their fiscal year, and that's the point. Like, that's actually really normal. Like, you'll notice that a lot of companies and a lot of industries, the beginning of the fiscal year is actually September 1st. And that's interesting to me. That's also the case.
Yeah, no effect on pay. And how is that the case? We had the option to charge for the MVR, for example, but we got that covered like through this process. Our orders are the orders. We already had things like the insurance consideration factored into our payments. So it really is no impact to the driver.
Don't say no impact to the driver. I could bring up so many drivers that I've heard of recently that actually got deactivated because they raised the bar in order to actually get onboarded, or in some cases stay onboarded, and some places still have a wait list.
All of that said, though, we had our own requirements and our own checks, but I'd say GigSafe is far superior with keeping up with insurances and the renewals and really strict with regard to registration. And they really do it very by the book. There are absolutely some drivers that unfortunately didn't make it through that process with us. So, I would say in that regard, it was very impactful to a lot of people. But I'd say if you were somebody who your name's on your registration, your name's on your insurance, you've got a clean driving record, there was no gimmick here. Like, this was really just about you getting onto what meets those new insurance's needs.
It's not surprising that because they needed new insurance, they had to raise the bar because of that. It just sucks how many people ended up on the wrong end of that. Like, DoorDash is one of those companies that in order to be a DoorDash driver, you just tick a box saying you have insurance, don't even need to prove it, and therefore you could drive. Some other companies don't even require that you keep sending them the insurance, they just need it for sign up. There are companies that are a lot more strict with it than others. It just means that those who do drive poorly don't end up staying on the platform. And I have a hot take for this. Bud Soda's gonna hate me for this take, but it is reality. From an insurance perspective, from the necessities of making sure you're working with quality drivers that make sure that they have their own shit together, I get why they are doing this now. It sucks that they're doing this. There are a lot of good drivers out there that just got caught in a bad day or a bad spree of time. Way back in the day, I had some accidents on my report, and because of that, it raised my insurance for that period of time, but I was able to move past it. And now, after I switched my insurance, I am saving $170 a month compared to what I had before. But that really does make a huge difference, especially if you're somebody who does this full time. Like, you can't spend ridiculous amounts of money on just insurance. It's just reality.
And yeah, to the degree of like over explanation, it's a hard one. It's like, on one hand, like, I hate the idea of changing our name to the Expedite app and not explaining to the fleet what's going on. But then almost to your point, it's like, does it really matter? You know what I mean? Because you open up the app, it's the same orders and all of that.
Yeah.
So,
I love how he's just like,
I mean, I hate the fact that this affected so many drivers at the end of the day, but if you really think about it, does it matter that they were deactivated? Not really.
and I hate how giddy he seems about that. Like, he's acting like this isn't a big deal because in the eyes of the company, you're just a driver and that's really the end of it. But to that driver, that could mean a significant amount of your income was lost because you lost access to one of the avenues of income that seemed to be very active, especially on the EasyCater platform.
Yeah.
it's a tough one for sure. I get your point. I'd say, like, I do think you're kind of suggesting that we were transparent, and I appreciate it. But I think we still have to kind of dial in how we communicate with our fleet, because we're transparent, but I know that there's definitely people still out there who either missed the message or didn't understand it.
Says the company that wrongfully deactivated a lot of people. And let's not act like this is an isolated incident either. There are a lot of people that were deactivated or really soft deactivated because they weren't accepting orders, but it's not like they weren't accepting orders because they weren't receiving orders that they could potentially take. It's not like they were saying no to those orders even though they were good. They were just so low and intolerable compared to what they would have gotten if they just worked with another app. So don't act like you were deactivating people simply because you changed insurances. There were people that were caught in a crossfire simply because of the volume you just didn't have, or the low quality volume that wasn't worth accepting in the eyes of an intelligent driver, because you don't want drivers that were good at what they do. You just wanted drivers who can get your orders done regardless of how low quality they were.
This was a really scary proposition for us. I mean, like, we again, I'm being very honest here, there were drivers that didn't complete it. Now, those drivers still have every opportunity to. Every day we still see more come in. But like, going into like the busy season, we saw a large group of drivers no longer be eligible for orders. That was frightening. Like, I was like losing my mind.
I wonder how large that group of drivers is. Like, out of the 10,000 drivers they had, right? How much of those drivers were actually the low quality drivers, at least in my opinion, the drivers that would just take any and every order, and that's what was scary to them. And how much of their wait lists they have to actually tap into, and how many of them were actually intelligent drivers who won't just take anything and everything. Because you gotta think that there are some drivers that are genuinely new and they just lightly tap into the gig economy. And then there are people that just fucking suck. That's just reality.
But it really went well. But I mean, there were definitely some markets that went better than others. So I'd say, like, above all, the markets that you would think, New York, Boston, those were definitely markets where we saw like more of an impact. Those are definitely markets where right now I'm being more aggressive with bringing on, new drivers.
What about Bud Soda? Yeah, Bud Soda was one of the people that were just wrongfully deactivated. Or more appropriately put, they needed to have their own insurance in order to be activated. And now they just can't be on the platform. So now they have to go a lot harder in order to have enough drivers for those areas. I wonder how many of them were in Florida though, because I know that there was one driver down here that was so annoyed with how DLIVRD handled themselves when they wrongfully deactivated him for inactivity and then put him on a wait list, and now he has to go through the whole wait list just to go back onto DLIVRD. So I wonder how affected he would be in that area.
So I mean, we're still licking our wounds a little bit, if you would say, but we're doing it in a way that we're proud of. We think this was the right choice. It's more compliant. And we'll be okay. We know it'll all work out.
It'll be okay. We'll find enough peons to do our deliveries for us. I mean, we're DLIVRD. We're a company. We don't care about the quality drivers. We just want some bitches that'll do our work for us.
I also like how he said, oh, we're licking our wounds like they're the victim here. That is a crazy position you're taking there. Like, there are a lot of drivers who just lost a significant amount of their income or a portion of their income that actually mattered. And now you're going to act like, oh, woe weighs you? Are you kidding me? me?
When it comes to oversaturation, like that's something that I've really kind of staked my career in many ways of fighting against.
Which is it? Are you worried about oversaturation, or are you worried about losing a lot of the drivers you had? Pick a lane. Like, those are two different wild extremes. Like, I get why there are wait lists, because you don't want to oversaturate the markets for the quality drivers that are on these platforms. You don't want to deactivate too many drivers and not have enough of them. What is your problem? Oversaturation or not having enough drivers? Pick one problem and fix it.
This is what I call it, because Curry does this as well. You and I have talked about this. This is what I call I don't know if maybe it doesn't relate to you anymore, but a soft deactivation where you can just email and get back on, but maybe that's not the case.
I would assume that's the case in this one. So Nomadic Gig Mom, I'm sorry, I don't have your info in front of me, but we definitely do essentially put drivers onto idle if you haven't done an order recently, and by no means trying to like hurt anybody, but more me here I am saying like I don't want to be oversaturated. Part of where like I would struggle with that is if I have all these accounts that aren't actually doing orders, then I have no choice but to come in and kind of pull in more and more. But typically, if your account was on idle, simply you're in good standing, you haven't done anything wrong, you just haven't taken an order recently, just contact our support team and they should be able to get you back live.
Literally, the person that I was talking to and talking about on this exact subject did exactly that, and they put them on a wait list. So that's a lot of crap. Also, just because you're not accepting orders doesn't mean you're not open to accept them. That means you got to actually send them something worth their time. If you're sending somebody an order and those are quality orders that you would 100% see somebody be like, okay, this is above the general average. Let's say like my minimum is $30. Like if the catering order is less than 30, it's not worth scheduling out my time for. I could do 2 orders in the same amount of time and I would make more than what a $20 catering order would be. So 30 is kind of my minimum. If you're not even matching that, that's a problem in my mind, because you can't expect drivers to schedule out their time during those periods of time, and you're not even beating out your competition at that point. Like, pick a lane.
But I think the part that, again, we talk about transparency a lot, and I think the part that our listeners here have no transparency on, that's got to be so hard. You have no idea how many total orders there are.
I love how they're blaming it on volume and not blaming it on the quality of the orders. Both of those things are problematic, but like I said, more orders is not the same thing as good orders.
He's using a dollar amount, so $120 order, you know, let's say $1,500 order. Those are going to take much longer, and you know, it could, you know, who knows what your cart size is, your bags, all that could take multiple load-ins and setup and all that. So I hear you, even on not just the amount of even if it was 120 and 120, I've had ones that are 120 going more miles that I can do in the time set from the app. But then I'll have one going like 1 mile to downtown Denver. And for those that don't live in big cities, million plus, like I do, or like Chris does. So like in my city, like to get downtown and park and deal with security at these buildings and use their carts and get a pass, you have to trade your ID for it. I mean, a lot of these buildings do this. And I mean, a lot of times I'll be at the you should be done point and I'm still getting credentials to go upstairs.
I think this is a valid question. I'm going to quickly almost defend Chris here and say that's not really his fault. That's more of EasyCater's fault. Like, if your vendor is EasyCater, right? Like, if EasyCater's sending you the offer and those are the time frames that they are expecting, it's not like it's their choice to make some changes. Like, sure, they could fight it, but then they would have to fight it for every 1,000+ orders in your just one area, and that's grossly underestimating that. And the amount of time that would take does seem unrealistic, at least in my opinion. So before even Chris says anything on this front, I do have to say that sounds more of a question for EasyCater than it is for Chris. I'm sure Chris will explain his position in a similar way, but that's how I perceive it.
One thing that I try to avoid when I come on to a podcast like this, but I'm going to violate it for a moment, I don't like to say Easy Cater by name because I don't speak for them. I'm not them, but this is something that they have given me specific permission to talk about. And that's the fact that if you're taking an order that they're most likely, we're talking about an Easy Cater order here, they're the ones who are setting that pickup time that gets sent to us. And where I'm going with it is when we're talking about a large order versus a small order, you really arguably should have more time for that large order because that padding between the pickup and delivery time should be longer than in small orders. Now, where like part of this is me trusting them, but then also telling me they're watching data, they're continuously improving, they're trying to like continue, it's such an imperfect science that also really requires the restaurant to be on time.
They say that they're continuously improving, they're continuously looking for ways to become better, and maybe that is the case. But that sounds like a dismissing answer rather than actually asking what the problem is and trying to solve the problem. Because I feel like the perspective of one is not going to be as clear as the data from the macro issue, which means that they're going to evaluate all of the data and see like, okay, from each of these restaurants, which ones are taking longer with certain price points of orders or something to that effect, like something that they can actually use as like a gauge to give the restaurant time to like get the order done and get the bags packed, etc. And what that's gonna look like for a place like Rice Mediterranean Catering is gonna be different than that of, let's say, a Cuban place, because Rice Mediterranean, they have all the bags packed. This is literally what they do. Whereas the Cuban place, they'll give you the trays, but they expect you to pack it, and the way you have to pack it is very delicate because there's a lot of liquidy stuff, so you have to account for the liquidy stuff when packing it. So it's inevitably going to take more time that way. Not to mention that if you pack it wrong, it could affect the quality of the meals.
They've done 10 times better than when we were setting it ourselves. I mean, 10 times better. Like they have so much more data than us and so many more like resources. But what I would also say that like this part's going to sound bad, but sometimes us being late to a delivery actually helps them improve that for the next time. So Steve, when you're saying that you got to this one and it took you 15 minutes to get it, and if that's something that's happening continuous, they've got the machine learning that that's going to get baked in for that address.
This is why some catering apps are so anal about you being on time to the pickup, which it is valid that you should be more concerned about being on time to the customer than to the pickup as a driver. But from a data perspective, I need to get better at setting these times perspective, I have a bunch of data saying that this restaurant, if they are on time, they're going to be late to the drop off, or if they're a little early, they're still late to the drop off because of the amount of food they've received or the amount of food that was ordered. That's not what they're saying here. Like, if you're late, on the other hand, you are the reason that you are late to the pickup. That data almost corrupts what they were trying to accomplish, which is why I'm like, you know what? You should be more concerned about the order being on time to the customer than being on time to the pickup. And that's why contract violations on DoorDash seem like nonsense, especially if you were late to the pickup. But there is a valid reason.
And that's going to help the next driver. Now, that didn't help you, I know.
Right, but then exactly, it doesn't backtrack and go, we'll help correct that and the other people who had problems there.
Yeah, and listen, the only, like, I hear you 100%, except that, again, I'm in the exact same boat. You know, if you were late on that order, I was late on that order too. And I'm out there trying to be late as little as possible so that I can get, you know, as many orders on our platform.
Yeah, you see, that's where I'm annoyed, because like they're making it sound like they're just as much of a victim, when in reality, EasyCater tracks us as drivers just as much as they track them as catering companies, like the dispatchers, you know what I'm saying?
And just because we say that you're not supposed to drop off 15 minutes early, that doesn't mean you can't walk in 25 minutes early. You know, walk in 25 minutes and you've got that extra time to drop it off.
Let the record show that the bigger company says dropping it off early is fine. Just don't mark it done until that time frame. Or don't mark yourself as arrived until that time frame.
I wish that I could have 2 or even at best 3 where I could set 3 zones. Like my close zone here. Show me everything. I don't care. This is where I live. Great. Show me this. And then a bigger loop saying, don't show me anything above 30 in this zone. And then over, like, for me, Littleton would take me 50 minutes at any time of day to get down there from where I am. Don't show me anything under $50 for that. It seems like you guys would save a lot of data money because I see them all the time. Why you send them to me?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Like right now in ours, you have the one zone, and then you can set the threshold for outside of it. But it's still, I get your point. It's still there's almost the middle zone is what's missing.
Yeah, I mean, well, also just like I feel like it would help you. You're going through AI learning models right now. Like you were even just talking about, it might even help places like, I don't know if it would help EasyCater, but it would absolutely help your logistics to know, dude, don't send Steve a $20 offer in Littleton. He's not going to do it.
Yep. No, it's going to save time for everybody. And honestly, just even the data of you putting it in there informs us areas where we don't have drivers, so we could be more strategic in our recruitment.
That is such an interesting idea. I don't think that would work with every app, though. Like, one of the challenges that I am noticing with a lot of the orders that I see that are pretty far away, like one of the things that DLIVRD TECH is doing, just to give a side-by-side comparison, they are sending me orders in Miami, in Jupiter, where I would never go, by the way. And not only that, they're also sending me orders in those areas that aren't from EasyCater. They're their direct partners. And that's the direction that DLIVRD is going. A lot of the complaints that I'm hearing from DLIVRD TECH drivers is that a lot of their direct contracts, either they're really low paying and not worth the time, or they're really well paying, but they end up getting canceled at the last minute, or they get canceled not too long after they've accepted it. That was a huge issue for me. Like, I won't accept direct contract orders with Pollo Tropical anymore because they are treating the orders that way. Like, why should I accept an order for Pollo Tropical for $70 if you're just going to unassign it and I'm left with the cancellation fee of $25? If that, they may cancel it at 2 hours and 3 minutes and I'm left with nada. DLIVRD is planning on doing that, where they're going direct with restaurants. They've literally said that. Now restaurants are going to be doing that as well with their own drivers, and that's something that we do with the software that we have. So it's not like this isn't happening. This is happening, and it's going to be more of a problem later on. So the way I see it is, if you're going to set radiuses based on how far they are from certain points of your drive, it's also whether or not it's worth going over there for that price point, or the security of actually being able to complete that order. Because if it's an EasyCater order, I can expect to be able to do that without an issue. If it's a direct contract order with a restaurant, I can't be expected to work with that restaurant anymore.
Real quick here on Bobby's comment too, is that, you know, like he said he was seeing 5 a week and now like 10 a day. Like, I would absolutely guess this doesn't have to do with just driver amounts. This is, you grew that. He's in Louisiana. You grew that market somehow big.
Could be. I mean, I'd have to look, but we could see a spike in orders. We could have had a new client. We could have lost like a good driver there, or he could have jumped to a next tier, maybe. You know, and I don't know. I love hearing it. You know,
yeah.
But there's like a lot of different things it could be.
What a hilarious line to give. Like, obviously, he can't be expected to know Bobby's exact situation offhand, but what a hilarious line to give, to be like, well, glad that you benefited from a lot of drivers being lost in that area. I don't know what the hell happened, but good on you, man.
So, like, for instance, dumpling, which a lot of the people in here know. I don't know if you know it well, but dumpling is, you get your own clients, you do grocery delivery. They also have a new website called preppedvacations.com. And what it is hooking up with Airbnb owners to have food stocked when guests get to the house. So you get tied in with Airbnb owners and they say, yeah, sure. Anytime a guest comes, they'll get them a grocery. Would you like your groceries stocked when you get here?
That is so interesting. Conceptually, that is a phenomenal idea. Wait, do you guys realize how wild that is? Like, what a great way, what an incredible service to provide Airbnb owners, especially if you're dealing with higher class clientele, right? Like, they're not, obviously, if they're gonna Airbnb someplace, right? The one time I went to an Airbnb, right? We had to spend a lot of time just grocery shopping. If that was built into the price, that would be so good, especially if you know exactly what you want. I feel like the only challenge with that is that if you want to prep the Airbnb, right, you can't really do alcohol because you would need to ID somebody on the way in. So that kind of cuts off all the bachelorette parties and such, right? Conceptually, I see a lot of potential there.
That's something you guys have even looked into?
Not exactly, because our core offering of Expedite, we're kind of dependent on others to like make that connection and then send us the order. But as we expand into these other entities, it is definitely something we could take on.
Yeah, you see, that is exactly what I find interesting about a lot of these dispatching companies, a lot of these gig companies. DoorDash is both sides of the coin. They are the ones facilitating the receiving of customers and dealing with the customers themselves, and also dealing with their drivers, dealing with onboarding, and having this huge army of drivers. Whereas a company like DLIVRD or DLIVRD, yes, they do have direct clients. DLIVRD is known for having direct clients with restaurants, with EasyCater, but they're the ones building the volume. They're not the ones getting orders. You know what I'm saying? They're basically partnering with a rainmaker, and they're the ones distributing the rain throughout the field to make sure that you're not flooding one area and the whole field is getting as much nutrients and as much water as possible so they could grow into a crop that actually makes sense. I don't know if that was the best analogy, but that was the first one I thought of offhand.
There's a lot more that we could be doing for our restaurants. And even again, like we purchased a reputation management tool.
You know what would really help your reputation? If you didn't wrongfully deactivate me and treat me like garbage. I think that would have helped your reputation so much.
We're going to have some new like social media optimizations. And I think we're still a good way away from being able to do this. But I want to be able to go to a restaurant and offer them so many products that they would never leave us. And they want to send us all their orders, and hopefully our products help them even grow more orders. And that's the vision of DLIVRD TECH.
I do think the social media side of things is going to be essential for a lot of these restaurants. So I think that's a smart move on their part. The setting ups part, I feel like you're going to have drivers that have more tools available than simply the catering bags and the larger vehicles. You're going to have people that have food handlers licenses and have sternos available for orders that require those kind of trays. It's not simply just the bags that are necessary. They are necessary regardless, but it's not just the bags. The other side to that is the catering orders. The reputation management tool is basically, please tell us we did a good job. Please, I need this. Considering the amount of hate videos I made, they got a lot of work to do and they got a lot of things to fix. And yes, I'm still bent about that. The social media thing, I think, is probably going to be the biggest thing, because a bad rating for them, for restaurants, is going to be such a make or break thing for whether or not they stay alive. Like, I've seen restaurants get absolutely annihilated because they had too many poor reviews on Yelp or on Google. So they had to rebrand entirely just to stay alive or to revive the business from what it was previously. It's just a thought.
I don't think I've ever got off the phone, honestly, from a DLIVRD customer service call and been upset.
I have. Literally, check out my video talking about my experience with DLIVRD and how I got wrongfully deactivated from them. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Again, No hate towards Steve. Obviously, he's talking to an executive on the DLIVRD platform. So obviously, he wants to build that relationship with them, and they may just have a quality relationship. I don't like being treated like garbage, and then other people claiming that they're these good quality human beings, when in reality, they are just horrendous towards the people they work with. And there's too much evidence of that in order to justify everything else.
They're actually doing something. Maybe they don't fully solve it. Maybe they can't, but they do try. They do seem to understand English.
Okay, that's actually a funny thing that they brought up, because I think that a lot of these support teams, they're from the Philippines. Some of them speak English, some of them don't. Some of them are just reading from a screen, and that's just how it is. So it's really funny when they bring that up, like, oh, they actually speak English. But it also brings up the point, when they do other shady things for that reason, that makes it more painful, at least in my opinion, to when they blatantly do those shady things, because that means somebody who absolutely knew what they were doing chose to hurt me, chose to actually do something inherently wrong to me as a driver. And that's just the reality of it. That's why I have such a problem with Brian Brock and Chris Heffernan as people, because they actively chose to screw me over and wrongfully deactivate me for standing up for myself when their support team stabbed me in the back. It was less about the reality of the situation and just more about stabbing me in the back. That was just who they were. That is the integrity and character of Brian Brock, of Chris Heffernan, and of DLIVRD Technologies, Expedite, and all of their subsequent companies. Because everything rises and falls on leadership.
I hope to see you in more spaces. I kind of keep waiting for you to show up in the B2B world, like the Currys and the, I feel like you're going to be there one day.
Is catering not considered B2B in terms of our positions with them? Like, in my mind, you're a business contracted by another business to complete the orders for their customers, who are in a lot of cases other businesses. I guess they are customers in that regard. They are just clients at the end of the day. But I don't know, it still feels like a customer thing. I had a very interesting conversation with the Mile IQ marketing representative with Partner Commerce. Again, I have an affiliate agreement with them, so we ended up in a conversation, and she was referring to the gig workers version of Mile IQ as their consumer model as opposed to their business model, which is working with the fleet as opposed to just you. Is that actually how it works? I feel like this is where my business literacy, there's a disconnect in my mind, because I would think that a self-employed person is in fact a self-employed person, or is a self-employed person not considered their own business, but a consumer that happens to be in business for themselves. I feel like I need to really delve deep into my own business literacy in order to actually confidently explain that.
I'm like blown away when I go there. They're just so kind and go out of their way to speak English. But we also provide English lessons for them. So while they're there, they're also hopefully improving and getting better. Because even though they are so kind in a lot of ways and speak good English, a lot of them, which I just didn't, a lot of them are self-conscious. A lot of them don't like their accents.
Is that true? Is that actually a thing that people who are from other countries experience or have accents experience? This is again one of those things, like, white guy, obviously he's ignorant as hell on this. I never thought that an accent would be something that someone would be self-conscious about in a way that would be an insecurity. Like, I'm from New York, and some people have said I have a very New York accent. So when I moved to Florida, some people are saying they could tell I'm from New York by the way I talk or the way I ask for a pie at a restaurant as opposed to a pizza. But that's never been something I've been insecure about. Like, I've never been insecure about an accent that I had. Like, is that actually a thing? Let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced anything of that sort, because that's left field to me. By the way, if you guys want to catch the full or really the 2-part video series going over that. The links to those videos are going to be in the description. Make sure you check that out. I think these are important updates for DLIVRD and Expedite for the future of gig workers, especially those who actually rely on DLIVRD. So make sure you're actually checking on that, because there was a lot of vital information that I just cut out because I didn't have a reaction to it. So make sure you guys are checking that out. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Obviously, I also ran it through my filter as well, and my filter comes from a place of pain and hurt, and that's not the experience that everyone has. And I'm not here to tell you how you feel. I'm telling you my perspective based on what I saw. Remember, everything is market to market, case by case. My case was I got stabbed in the back. Some other people will die on that hill and actually fight for that company the way that they would fight for their own child. I don't agree with people who do that, but at the same time, I can respect it enough to say, develop your own opinion and build your own perspective, do your own research, and live your own experiences based on what you want in your life. Guys, once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you hit like, subscribe. Make sure to check out my website, drivenwyld.com, for more information about some more of the platforms that we have went over and other services we have for gig workers, restaurants, and otherwise. Also, if you guys want to stay on the cutting edge of everything that's happening in the gig economy today, make sure you check out our other channel, the Gone Wild Live Clips and Podcast, where we take the live streams we hold on YouTube and on Rumble, cut them down into more digestible clips, and have them posted there. Also, check out my Patreon for exclusive clips you can't find anywhere else, other free resources available, and full, raw, uncut live streams of our Gone Wild podcast. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time.